that even like plants like potatoes in Ireland, tomatoes in Italy and Chile and Thailand was cultivated here first. So we went over that. I think this might have went into like creating like seeds and stuff like that too. But we'll find out. Then it went over that particular section went over to land return and remeditation. And then now we're on area 3, land, water, air, and animal restoration. So that's where we're gonna start. And that is on 107. 107. I hope people come in, enjoy the time here. Go ahead and stop the music. I like this song. This song is good. What is this song called? This song's called. Hold on. Come on. It's called Emo. Authentic EDM / future. Bass. Now it has a bunch of number 964-234. Okay. Anyways. All right, Joe, you ready to start this?
I am ready when you are.
All right. I'll go ahead and start. I'm going to read this page and the next page, and it's only half a page.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, everybody, let's get going. Land, water, air, and animal restoration. Recent studies show that although the world's 370 million indigenous people make up less than 5% of the total human population, traditional indigenous territories encompass between 22 to 25% of the world's land surface and coincide with areas that hold 80 to 90% of the planet's biodiversity. The greatest diversity of indigenous groups exist within the tropical forests of the Americas, Africa, and Asia. And 11% of the world's forests are legally quote unquote owned by indigenous people and communities. These forests, like the Amazon, are the lungs of the world, producing about 20% of the oxygen in our Earth's atmosphere. Climate research indicates that one of the most alarming aspects of the current environmental crisis is the loss of biodiversity, which affects human survival by interfering with critical ecosystems maintenance, such as pollination, and water purification. Loss of biodiversity threatens the land, air, and water, relatives with whom we share this world. Of the 4 billion species that have evolved over the last 3.5 billion years, 99% have gone extinct. That rate of extinction has always been balanced by the evolution of new species. But there have been 5 exceptions to this pattern, 5 instances of mass extinction when the rate of species loss was so great that the biodiversity of the earth was drastically reduced. These instances were caused by sudden catalytic cataclysmic events such as a series of mass volcanoes, outbursts, major asteroid impacts, or dramatic sea level change. A recent study shows that there has been an increasingly rapid rate of species loss over the last few centuries when compared to the quote-unquote normal rate of extinction. These findings show species are going extinct at a rate of up to 100 times the background rate. In other words, extinction rates have reached levels unparalleled since the dinosaurs unalived out 66 million years ago. There is no longer any doubt that we have entered the sixth mass extinction of the Earth's history. After the last mass extinction event has caused species biodiversity to recover, extinction and reduction in biodiversity are directly linked to land degradation.
You skipped the line.
All right, after the last mass extinction event that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs, it took hundreds of thousands of years for species biodiversity to recover. Extinctions and reductions of biodiversity are directly linked to land degradation. In places where the health of the land has been destroyed through pollination, pollution, and hyper-exploitation, diversity diminished. Yet where indigenous people have freedom to caretake the land, biodiversity flourishes. This is because as opposed to capitalism, indigenous people around the world do not see themselves as separate from the land. For us, land, plants, animals, and water are our relatives. The soil is alive and interacting with the air, waterways, and all other than human creatures. The indigenous perspective looks forward to the future of our children, our children's children, and to the well-being of all living things. It also looks back to the wisdom of our ancestors. This intimate relationship between past, present, and future allows for close observation of the interaction and interdependencies between species across time and space.
Okay. The air conditioning's a little loud if you want to shut your door.
There's nothing I can do about it.
I know. It allows for reverence of the land in which humans live in balance with all other beings. Water, air, animal, and human restoration depends upon the health of the land. Restoring the land and our commitment to living in balance with our relatives is thus key to securing a future for all. Current statistics about mass extinction, biodiversity, and air quality show irrefutably that land cannot simply be, quote, restored by technological fixes or environmental protections educated in settler institutions. Land restoration must center indigenous land stewardship and multi-species caretaking, and thus the mass return of land to indigenous nations and the implementation of true indigenous self-determination, if we are to have any hope of a future on this planet. Recommendations. Indigenous people have played a key role in climate change mitigation and adaptation. In New Zealand, for example, Maori people have advocated for the rights of the sacred Whanganui River, which has been given the status of personhood for its protection. We can promote the return of land to indigenous people wherever we are. Popular tactics for indigenous land return include land trust campaigns and honor taxes, whereby trusts are created with the purpose of purchasing land back, or where native nations occupied by cities assert that occupiers pay the tribe and, quote, honor tax. It is easy to see that indigenous people are the most suited and knowledgeable caretakers of the land. Giving land back to indigenous people is the first step in land restoration. Capitalism, in its unrelenting demand for profit, uses and destroys the land with no consideration for future generations. We must understand that capitalism is the enemy of the future. It does not see the land as a living thing to be cared for and respected, but simply another tool with which to satisfy greed. Extractive industries, logging, encroaching infrastructure, deforestation, and improper agricultural practices, such as monocropping and overgrazing, all contribute to a decline in soil structure. Soil degradation in the form of salt and water imbalances is often caused by waste disposal, chemical pollutants, and leaking pipelines. The compression of soil, which decreases air and water retention, is the result of soil being too compacted by heavy machinery, floods, and building structures.
Thank you. One more person up, and that's it. Okay. Excessive irrigation and fertilizers induce soil fertility depletion, while logging and deforestation lead to accelerated erosion. Heavy soil is essential for the production of vegetation. A diversity of vegetation attracts insects, birds, and other animals that serve important functions in the maintenance of ecosystems. Land restoration is imperative to restoring biodiversity. Biodiversity is the key to a vibrant and thriving planet. We must design ecological restoration projects across the globe. Traditional practice for ecological restoration includes revegetation by combining native, domestic, and wild plant species, crop rotations, agroforestry, burning practices, e.g., as utilized by the Aboriginal people of Australia, intercropping, and water harvesting. These practices are designed to increase the health of the soil, protect crops, and create biodiversity. Anyone can promote food sovereignty in their local context by gardening on a small or large scale. Stewardship of the land ensures food security, which is increasingly important in these times of COVID-19. Find, join, and help a local organization that is pushing back against pollution or contamination caused by industry and resource extraction. Ending all forms of toxic capitalism will take us a long way to restoring the land to health. The two greatest threats faced by indigenous people are the loss of land and the loss of ancestral knowledge. This is as serious a threat as massive extinction of species on Earth. Ancestral wisdom and traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, must be preserved and protected. Gathering of elders where they share their knowledge with tribal members and other indigenous groups can be an effective mechanism to ensuring that knowledge is not lost, especially if indigenous youth are active participants. Support for Indigenous Women's Network is also needed, as they are the carriers of ancestral knowledge. Area 4, protections and restoration of sacred sites. The United States is an empire bringing death and destruction to those within its grasp. Those who try to protect the land from imperial violence are cast as obstacles and deemed expendable and criminal.
In 2016, we saw the brutalization of water protectors at Standing Rock by militarized police. Oil and gas industries continue to target Chaco Canyon and mark the surrounding communities as sacrifice zones. In 2019, 33 elders were arrested for blocking access to the Mauna Kea for construction of the 30-meter telescope. Tahano Odham relatives face daily harassment and restriction of movement in their own homelands by U.S. Border Patrol agents. Police officers demand consent. How can you, quote, demand consent? At Pupil Point. Yet, it is the Wet'suwet'en who are criminalized for protecting their territory. Indigenous land defenders of the Amazon are unalived on purpose for protecting forests that sustain life for the entire planet. The criminalization of land defenders and water protectors is a tactic to eliminate and uproot indigenous people and other than human relatives. Indigenous people will always resist imperialism and capitalist development because we recognize the United States as an invader. We understand that protecting our relatives, land, water, air, ancestors, women, two-spirit, animals, medicines, children, and others is at the heart of our customary forms of governance. It is what makes us who we are. While phrases that emphasize the sacred, including, quote, sacred sites, quote, women are sacred, and, quote, we are sacred, are now common for describing why we should practice the art of protection. At its base, protecting is simply about being a good relative. Given the violence and destruction that U.S. imperialism forces upon us, protecting our relatives is a direct rejection of capitalism and empire. We demand the liberation of all our relatives. We demand a future. The Red Deal extends solidarity to indigenous people around the world who are fighting to protect our relatives from the ongoing ravages of imperialism. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, or UNDRIP, explicitly states in Article 25, quote, indigenous people have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationship with their traditionally owned or otherwise occupied and used lands, territories, waters, and coastal seas, and other resources, and to uphold their responsibilities to future generations in this regard. We recognize the need for international leaders to hold imperial nations accountable for their attacks on indigenous land and bodies. Locally, the continued violation of our relatives stems directly from colonial land loss policies and genocidal attacks by the U.S. government.
For as long as the settler occupation of our land exists, our relatives will continue to bear the brunt of capitalism. Therefore, capitalism and imperialism must die to protect the sacred. Recommendations, bullet points. We must end the criminalization and brutalization of water protectors and land defenders. We must understand that what happens to the land happens to the people and vice versa. The protection of relatives must include all relatives. No one is free unless we are all free. Public land is stolen land. Outdoor recreation is often on land that has been stolen and converted into public land. Conservationists and nature lovers who participate in progressive causes must respect the sacred, and even if this means they can no longer use the land for recreational activities. Mass movements must be willing to educate about what is sacred and why it is important to respect and protect what is sacred. Stolen land must be returned. Baiwai, Blue Lake, is an area which is sacred and only used by indigenous people of the Taos Pueblo. Blue Lake has returned to Taos Pueblo in 1970, ending the termination era, which devastated indigenous nations and caused the loss of a further 1.4 million acres of tribal land. The Blue Lake example shows how the protection of sacred sites is key to the retention, return, and restoration of stolen land. Great Chico Canyon, Chaco, SHACO, Chaco Canyon, supports people and communities directly dealing with oil and gas infrastructure. Stop government initiated lease sales for fracking operation, protest at bureaus of land management offices, raise concern about MMIWG2S, and quote unquote man camps. Go to local organized events and meetings to end fracking in our area. Manu Keen, it's Mauna, and its KEA protest to stop the construction of the 30-meter telescope, amplify the international divestment campaign, support the struggle through writing, support international movement. Oh, wait, you can do that one.
Support international movements and grassroots, organizing through education, solidarity events, film screenings, teach-ins, protests, and rallies. Provide free legal work and services for water protectors and land defenders. Donate to legal funds like Unistoten Camp and Water Protectors Legal Collective. Area 5. Enforcement of treaty rights and other agreements. Colonial presidents, congresses, and courts see treaties as business transactions to open up indigenous territory for the expansion of plantation slave. They say plantation enslavement, but it's also it's chattel. Agriculture, commerce, trade, and resource extraction. It is as common for politicians to pledge to, quote, honor the treaties as it is for them to break or ignore treaties. To do otherwise would be contrary to the intention of invaders, which is to secure permanent white settlement by eliminating indigenous nationhood. The colonial approach to treaties has resulted in nothing less than theft and genocide for indigenous people. But it is arrogant for invaders to think their systems of diplomacy and trade are the only traditions that matter. Indigenous diplomacy proliferated before the European invasion and continues to this day. For example, Leanne Betta Samosik Simpson considers the Gudjongania a pre-colonial treaty for sharing territory between the Nashabag Nation and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy in what is today known as Southern Ontario. Unlike the European Westphalian state model of sovereignty, defined by exclusivity over territory, indigenous treaties, such as the Gadu-Naganina, which defined the shared territory as, quote, Ardish, allows for diverse, overlapping indigenous jurisdictions and sovereignties. Quote, European political traditions would have us believe that being sovereign means asserting exclusive control over a territory, the Naya scholar Emily Riddle argues, whereas indigenous political traditions, quote, teach us that it is through our relationship with others that we are sovereign, that sharing is not a sign of weakness, but of ultimate strength and diplomacy.
All right, here we go. This is going to be a hard word. Wicasa, which is Kul, then space WCISA, historian Nick Estes notes that Wolokota, meaning, quote, peace or treaty, originated from the Tatisawin, the white buffalo woman, who brought the Lakota nation into correct relations with the animal and plant nation. This understanding of treaty making and diplomacy extended beyond the world of what could be considered solely human. Lakota people took their understanding of this original covenant. Wait, is that right? Covenant?
Yeah. Covenant.
What?
Covenant.
Yeah, okay. Covenant with the non-human world with them as they entered into a treaty relations with colonized nations like the United States. In the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty, for instance, Lakota people negotiated a 32 million acre hunting territory, quote, so long as the buffalo may range, end quote, in addition to the 35 million acre permit reservation permanent reservation. In other words, this treaty was also to secure the future existence of the Buffalo Nation in relations to Lakota people that stem from the covenant or treaty made by women, not men. These examples show that discourse is resolved through creating permanent political relations between parties, including other than human nations, based on the moral responsibility and good faith pledges. The consequence for violating these indigenous covenants extend far beyond the human world. Global warming and the sixth mass extinction events are the apocalyptic result of this, cascading imbalance. While those most responsible for climate change, imperial nations, have proposed remedies through capitalist markets and techno fixes, none so far have sought to rectify their irresponsibility. Their failure to act holds the entire future hostage. Original instructions, which emphasize peaceful and mutual relations between humans and other than humans, inform the way indigenous people have historically entered into relations with European nations. Even if original instructions are not reciprocated, each party to a treaty has equal power to interpret the meaning of the agreement, while colonizers have chosen to interpret treaties to advance their own genocidal interests. Indigenous people have never surrendered the moral authority, responsibility, or the sense of justice that original instructions mandate. One of the most important expressions of this commitment is the People's Agreement signed in Cochabamba, Bolivia, which proposed not only just relations with the other non-human world, but also impending the cause of unequal relations between entering nations and human themselves, imperialism and capitalism.
The indigenous Andean cosmovision of Vivir Bien, Living Well, and Pachamama, Mother Earth, are central to understanding the People's Accords. Living Well is not anthropocentric or focused solely on human relations. It is Earth-centric, focusing on the whole. It understands that capitalist dominion over nature is patriarchal. Domination over nature is patriarchal, and that overconsumption, which is driven by the first world, is not the solution but the problem. If all of humans consumed as much as the average U.S. citizen, we would need 4 Earths to sustain it. We only have one planet to share, and just relations with the natural world are impossible without just, equitable relations among humanity first. Like the Red Deal, the People's Accords are an indigenous treaty, a covenant with the earth and its people. The U.S.-backed right-wing military coup that disposed MAS leader and Bolivian President Evo Morales in 2019 was also a coup against the ECHO covenant and indigenous socialism. Now, more than ever, it is necessary to reestablish correct relations by enforcing the original covenant, a living document or treaty with the earth. This begins by upholding the indigenous interpretation and authority over all treaties and agreements made with colonial powers, whether those agreements were struck 300 years ago or yesterday. There are also hundreds of multilateral agreements and treaties with social movements and the humble people of the earth that require enforcement. We can't and won't wait for colonizers. The power is in our hands to enact natural law and restore balance in accordance with indigenous principles. Recommendations: decolonize the atmosphere. Restore to oppressed nations and developing countries the atmospheric space that is occupied by first world greenhouse gas emissions. Nations of the Global South cannot follow the same path of development of the North that require massive amounts of carbon emissions in their industrialization process. The right to develop is hindered by the colonization of the atmosphere by the first world's carbon emissions. This means the decolonization of the atmosphere through the reduction and absorption of their emissions.
Transfer technology. First world countries must assume all the cost of technology transfer needs for oppressed nations who have lost development opportunities due to living under the boot of the U.S. imperialism or in a restricted atmospheric space. Open the borders. First world countries must assume all responsibility for the hundreds of millions of people that will be forced to migrate due to capitalist-driven climate change. They must eliminate their restrictive immigration policies and instead offer immigrants a decent life with full human rights guaranteed to their countries. Pay climate debt. First world countries must assume all adaptation debt related to the impact of climate change on developing countries by providing the means to prevent, minimize, and deal with damages arising from their excessive emissions. Mass land return. Return land to indigenous nations, the original caretakers. Billions of acres of territory have been taken out of indigenous ecological stewardship, resulting in mass extinction. Restoring the land to indigenous caretakers is a necessary step towards ensuring any kind of future of this planet. Restoring treaty making with indigenous nations. Respect and uphold indigenous treaties as international agreements and the supreme law of the land. Adopt and implement the 2007 United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Adopt and implement the 2010 People's Agreement. Adopt and implement the plural national governance structure or constitutions that recognize, upholds, and defends indigenous sovereignty and nationhood. Adopt and implement the 2011 Mother Earth Accord. Adopt and implement the indigenous principles of just transition. Adopt and implement the 2013 Treaty of Protect the Sacred from Tar Sand Projects. Adopt and implement the 2010 Universal Declaration of Rights of Mother Earth.
Conclusion. We began the Red Deal with the oldest yet often forgotten struggle on this continent, ending colonial occupation. While usually erased from the history of this nation, settler colonialism has fundamentally shaped the development of the United States and the world that it dominates economically and politically. Ending the occupation links those of us in the seat of empire with those who face its weapons, soldiers, and policies around the world. Together, we share the common enemy of U.S. imperialism. This is why we began with ending the occupation. The struggle against occupation on this continent has remained strong throughout history and grows even to this day. We've seen this in the global uprisings led by Black relatives who have been resisting the colonization of Africa and the enslavement and oppression of African people stolen to work on this continent for centuries. Even with the COVID-19 pandemic, the uprisings during the summer of 2020 were some of the largest mobilizations in U.S. history. The spread of uprisings across the country was also marked by the sharpening of tactics and clarity of the roots of the issue, with images of burned down police precincts and flipped cop cars evoking memories of Black and indigenous resistance to plantations of enslaved people and frontier forts. The recent calls for defunding police and prisons stretch forward from a long history of abolitionist struggle. It is important that we continue nurturing these histories and movements of struggle against occupation on these lands and continue to build relationships with others globally who face the violence of occupation. We began in part one with addressing those things that act as obstacles to our collective liberation. The prisons and detention centers filled with our family members, the police officers and prison guards who stand between us and the capitalist interests they defend, and the military, police, and vigilantes who unalive our relatives. As we know, colonial occupation is upheld by constant threats of violence and in many instances actual violence. It is therefore no surprise that these obstacles to our life and well-being that employ violence in order to maintain the occupation receive the largest proportions of resources by the U.S. settler state. We therefore must seek to dismantle these institutions that get in our way of living good lives, so we aim to divert resources away from them through de-investment.
Might as well read that whole thing.
Okay, this is just the first step. It is not enough to be against any one thing, even something as big, evil, and all-encompassing as colonial occupation. Ending the occupation gives us the space to breathe and envision other possibilities that we are for, and we must be clear about what we are for. We are for indigenous life, for the life of all human and other than human beings. In order to live dignified lives, we must heal ourselves from the destruction caused by colonialism and capitalism by stopping what harms us and desecrates our land, and instead begin to build what will sustain us.
All right, let's go on. I think this is the end. This is the conclusion. Our words are powerful. Our knowledge is inevitable. Infrastructures of relations. In 2017, Tillage scholar, T-L-I-N-G-I-T, scholar Annie Spice sat down with Eunice Oaten, hereditary spokesman Frida Hudson, for an interview that has since appeared in Standing Rock, voice of the hashtag No Doubt movement, NODALP movement, and edited volume of over 40 contributors reflecting on the history and significance of the hashtag No Doubt DALP uprising at Standing Rock in 2016. Spice's interview with Hudson was conducted in a log cabin in Hudson was asked to build in April 2010, 2 years after the Wet'suwet'en clans refused the British Columbia Treaty process requiring them to cede their ancestral lands to Canada. Midway through the interview, their conversation turned to the topic of critical infrastructure, a phrase that has been used repeatedly by the Canadian government to criminalize Wet'suwet'en people whose land Canada claims to be, quote, in the way of lucrative gas and oil pipelines. Here is the interview. I said it right! Yay! Finally!
Okay, for
Spice.
the interview, would you like me to read Spice and you read Houston, or?
No.
Oh no, it's just that little bit. Go ahead. Sorry.
Spice, I am wonderful. How do you think? I am wondering. There you go. I am wondering. How do you think? I'm wondering how you think the way that industry approaches the land and the water and animals is different than the way you view those same things. Hudson, our critical infrastructure is the clean drinking water and the very water that the salmon spawn in. That salmon is our food resource. It's our main staple food. That's one of our critical infrastructures. And there's berries that are our critical infrastructure, because the berries not only feed us, they also feed the bears and the salmon. also don't just feed us, they feed the bears. All of that is part of the system that our people depend on. And that that whole cycle and system is our critical infrastructure. And that's what we're trying to protect, an infrastructure that we depend on.
The cabin the interview was conducted in, one of several structures that now make up what is commonly known as Unistoten Camp. The Unistoten Camp was established, quote, to enforce the decision to preserve the territory for future generations. The cabin in which Spice and Houston are talking is built in the exact area where TransCanada, Enbridge, and Pacific Trails want to lay oil and gas pipelines. The critical infrastructure that Canada has waged over a decade's worth of violent evictions, demolitions, surveillance, and harassment campaigns against Wet'suwet'en people to guarantee. Still, they will not leave the camp nor abandon their territory. The Unistoten, we are reminded, quote, are fighting for the future health of the land. In addition to defining what critical infrastructure means for the Wet'suwet'en, Houston defines what it means for settler society and corporations in Canada. Quote, industry and government always talk about critical infrastructure, and their critical infrastructure is making money and using destructive projects to make that money. We highlight Houston's comments about critical infrastructure because they speak to the broader ethics and goals that drive the Red Deal's vision for economic and political change. As we have shown throughout this book, a structural perspective rooted in Indigenous knowledge, particularly our traditions of science and technology, seeks to build critical infrastructures premised on methods of rationality that emphasize, above all else, caretaking and balance. This is crucial because the infrastructures we must dismantle are not only those that manifest in pipelines, bulldozers, smokestacks, concrete dams, or man camps. The material infrastructure of extractivism, thank you, that word was hard on me. Rather, the critical infrastructure we must undo in the philosophy that drives these material conditions. As Houston notes, this philosophy is money, and its primary method of relationality is destruction. There is another word for a money-driven system that expresses its existence through destruction: capitalism. Capitalism destroys life, it pollutes the rivers, it scars mountains, it starves moose, wolves, and salmon. It alienates our bonds with each other and with the earth. Its very existence demands our disappearance.
The Red Nation is serious about building alternatives to the death world of capitalism that we currently endure. We are serious because we know what is at stake if we do not. As we say in the Red Deal, we have two paths: decolonization or extinction. Like the Wet'suwet'en, we are indigenous peoples who belong to and love our nation. Our sovereignty, our very being, cannot be separate from the health and well-being of the land. Like all societies and civilizations, our rationality and the values upon which these practices are based is what makes us who we are. Our political orders and systems of governance only matter if we caretake the land. We are intelligible through our relationship with the land, literally. We do not want to endure any longer. We want to thrive. It is for this reason that we cannot accept a path other than decolonization. as Sikanju Tutawan scholar, Sicangu, and in the last name Titunwa scholar Edward Valendra argues about his own nation, the Osaita Sawakan Yoate. I tried. I swear to God, I tried. Our sovereignty flows directly from our origin story. We must follow our original instructions to be a good relative. This is precisely what our Wet'suwet'en relatives at Eunice O'Eton camp have shown us in their steadfast fight for the future health of the land. This is also what our Osetai Sakowin relatives at Standing Rock did during the Nandalip movement when they became water protectors to answer the call for help from their relatives of the Water Nation. Quote, since water is our relative, we protect all of our relatives from harm, end quote, says Valendra. It's my fault. Quote, resisting DAPL was our response to the relatives' call for help. Answering that call was and remains our responsibility. The crucial infrastructure of indigenous worlds is fundamentally about responsibility and being a good relative. But our responsibilities do not happen only in the realm of political transformation. Caretaking, which we address in the introduction and in part 3, is the basis too for vibrant economies that must work fluidly with political structures and reinforce the world we seek to build beyond capitalism. We must thus have faith in our own forms of indigenous political economy, the critical infrastructures that Hunson speaks of so eloquently. We must rigorously study, theorize, enact, and experiment with these forms. While it covers ambiguous terrain, the Red Deal at its basis provides a program for study, theorization, action, and experimentation. But we must do the work. And the cold, hard truth is that we must not only be willing to do the work on the small scale whenever it suits us in our own lives and in our families, or even in the Red Nation.
We must be willing, as our fearless Wet'suwet'en relatives have done, to enforce these orders on a large scale. In conversation, the Red Nation comrade Nick Estes stated, quote, I don't want to just honor the treaties, I want to enforce them. We can and should implement these programs in our own communities to alleviate suffering and protect what lands we are still able to caretake under colonial rule. To survive extinction, however, we must enforce indigenous orders in and amongst those who have made it clear they will not stop their plunder until we are all unalived. Settler and imperial nations, military superpowers, multinational corporations, and members of the ruling class are enemies of the earth and the greatest danger to our future. How will we enforce indigenous political, scientific, and economic orders to successfully prevent our mass ruin? This is the challenge we confront and pose in the Red Deal, and it is the challenge that all who take up the Red Deal must also confront. The power of words. Like the phrase, quote, land back, the Red Deal isn't entirely new. Every generation of indigenous people since invasion has wanted land back, and so too have they wanted to restore correct relations like the ones we spell out in these pages. The aspirations for justice stem from deep-rooted traditions, practices, and knowledges embedded within the land itself. The Red Deal is a theory and a program that emerges from experience. It is rooted in struggle, in what we do, what we observe, and the relationships we make and sometimes break. It is thoroughly grounded in the material world we inhabit. It does not come from thought experiments or philosophical debates. Our writing and thinking quite literally emerge from the ground up. They are always grounded in our relationship with land and with people. They are a manifestation of and directly responsive to action. We have written this book not as a guidebook to help movements see what needs to be done or to confirm what is missing from their own struggles. It is our view that Indigenous people do not write enough, and when we do, others rarely listen. Why else would we be on the precipice of mass extinction?
If humanity was already following the guidelines of Indigenous people, we would be in a much different situation, and we would not have to write yet another program for liberation. We certainly do not write enough for our own people. Hold on, gotta fix up the puzzle. Yeah, I did it right the first time. We certainly do not write enough for our own people in a way that speaks to their hardest struggles and deepest dreams. We thus take our role as revolutionaries and intellectuals seriously because we take our people seriously. We are not apart from our people. We are the people. In fact, the drafting of this text involved countless hours of meetings with Indigenous communities throughout Turtle Island and beyond. Many of the drafts were not academic or professional intellectuals in the Western sense, but nonetheless hold valuable knowledge and skills that have brought this project to fruition. The Red Deal wasn't drafted in a closed-door meeting or at the whims of the corporate structured NGO or nonprofit. In a very Indigenous process, it was written and created through dialogue, reflection, and action. This a movement document that comes from the humble people of the earth. We sincerely hope you find meanings in our words, that this book touches your heart and ignites your soul. Our words are sincere, and our thoughts and hopes are given freely to inspire our relatives and humble people of the earth to rise up and reclaim their humanity. They are, as our Dene relatives remind us, a sacred wind that carries the power to shape action. As much as we hope the Red Deal inspires monumental action and mass mobilization, we also hope it inspires more writing and more thinking. Setting our pen to the piece of paper or sitting down at a computer to write a thought, let alone a book, as after all action, not to mention hard work. It is a form of what Leon Betus Samosek Simpson calls, quote, Indigenous excellence, or rigorous engagement with Indigenous knowledge that happens in relations to the land and to other human beings. While we are also unapologetic leftists, we do not prioritize these intellectual and political traditions over Indigenous ones. If anything, we filter, center, and interpret our politics through the commitment of Indigenous political economy and for futurity, first and foremost, is Futurity. First and foremost, to do otherwise would be contrary to who we are in this world. As the Red Deal continues to be read, shared, debated, and implemented, we ask that its Indigenous intent and design do not decentered or whittle down for the sake of expendency, or that it is reduced to culture or spiritual window dressing for otherwise scientific, economic driven programs like designed by white dude, quote unquote, experts.
Unlike thinkers who center European thought, politics, and movements to not only perpetrate European colonialism,
It's perpetual.
but also perpetuate European colonialism, but also try to apply it to the entire world. Indigenous knowledge is not parochial thought that applies to parochial thought that applies to just one local culture, one place, or one time period. Indigenous knowledge is rigorous, scientific, inclusive, diverse, and ever-changing. The knowledge we share in is comprised of indigenous science, economics, and political science that must be at the center of any climate justice program, just as our youth, women, and warriors have been since its inception. Our emphasis on indigenous knowledge may seem like a rehashing of what is already available to movements worked through by other indigenous organizations, movements, scholars, or leaders that precede us. Some may read this and feel discouraged or uninspired because we are not proposing anything new. The truth is, we are not entirely at least. The methods of decolonization and revolution we draw from, as well as our focus on how indigenous knowledge incites transformation and change, aren't anything new. But this is because we understand the Red Deal and the Red Nation more broadly, as belonging to long-standing, dynamic traditions of indigenous resistance. Ours is a generational fight that picks up where our predecessors and ancestors left off. We are simply attempting to fulfill these original instructions that Valandria writes about, the same instructions that our ancestors set out all those years ago to fulfill. In many ways, we hope to be the culmination of our ancestors' freedom dreams, premised always on returning to our humanity and our origins as good relatives. What is perhaps different about the Red Deal is the scale of application they are Given the planetary reach of mass extinction caused by a global system of capitalism, our program for freedom must be equally audacious and far-reaching. There is no reason why indigenous revolutionaries can't lead us in this collective transformation to the future. There is also no excuse to continue or sideline indigenous people or knowledge simply because of the racism and ignorance that underwrites so much of what counts for radical or revolutionary politics. The extent to which the left, particularly in North America, continues to do so will be the measure of its failure to contribute in any meaningful way to the global revolution yet to come.
Do you want me to read the rest for the rest of the meeting? Because you sound like you're kind of fading off.
Well, it's your turn to read.
Or do you want me to keep going and then you can take a break since you read all day today already? It's up to you.
It's your turn to read.
Yeah, I know, but is it the end? Because it has the appendix. Still have the appendix.
Oh, if you want to read the appendix, so you can read that first page, and then I'll read.
Well, no, I was just asking because you sound like you're like getting to the end of reading time because you've read a lot already today. You know what I mean? That's why I was asking.
No, I'm okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
The Red Nation is not asking for a seat at the table of the ruling class or on the left. It is telling humanity to listen to indigenous people. Don't just take us seriously. Take our lead. For as the Haudenosaunee feminist Teresa McCarthy argues, quote, assertion of indigenous knowledge, provide, quote, models that pose alternatives to mainstream ideas, something we desperately need in these times. In her reflection on the leadership of the Haudenosaunee diplomats and governance system in the establishment of indigenous internationalism, McCarthy reminds us that the Haudenosaunee and other indigenous nations of the world built an entire international indigenous human rights infrastructure with no resources other than words and language. Our words are powerful. Our knowledge is inevitable. Both come from and reaffirm the worlds we inhabit and continue to build even under apocalyptic conditions. They convey strength and innovation because we belong to a long tradition of indigenous resistance. We have done this before. As Comrade Nick Estes' book states, our future is the future. Our history is the future. In closing, we hope that these words move you to act. Each day in the Red Nation, we study, theorize, enact, and experiment with everything we have laid out here in the Red Deal. We govern ourselves and our relations according to one simple philosophy: be a good relative. We are, as a collective, an experiment in practicing infrastructures of indigenous world making, premised on the central edict. We don't always get it right, but we refuse to give up because we carry the dreams of our ancestors in our hearts. These dreams will never steer us wrong, and they will not steer you wrong. The struggle to remember our humanity through our love for the earth while defining the future for all, join us. We are waiting for you. We welcome you, and we are ready to act. Now, let's go over this. Hold on, before we do the appendix. Let me see here. It says policy unity, principle of unity. So, I think it might be worth it. Let's find out. What's the worst, right? Was that a half page? All right, I'll read this page then, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, appendix. Let's see if this is worth reading. I think it might be. Who are we? The Red Nation is dedicated to the liberation of Native peoples from capitalism and colonialism. We center Native political agendas and struggles through direct actions, advocacy, mobilization, and education. We are a coalition of Native and non-Native activists, educators, students, and community organizers advocating for Native liberation. We formed to address the marginalization and invisibility of Native struggles within mainstream social justice, organizing, and to the foreground the targeted destruction of the violence towards Native life and land. Areas of struggle, indigeneity, and this is the definition they come up. I think indigeneity. We struggle for the defense of and livelihood of Native peoples and lands. Indigeneity is a political condition that challenges the existence and domination of colonial nation states. Liberation. We struggle for the repatriation of Native lives and land. Liberation is not about healing or getting over it. It is a struggle for material and structural transformation. Resistance. We continue the long history of Native anti-colonial resistance by reviving active resistance as fundamental to liberation. Coalitions. We mobilize for widespread action and community engagement in Native struggles for liberation. I'll let you read that part because it goes to your next page. Policies and unity. Are you there? You're muted. When we go? Oh no, Joe. Where'd you go? Hello,
Right
Joe.
here. I'm right here.
All right, cool.
I'm right here.
All right, cool.
I fell asleep.
You want me to go and read? I can read.
Yeah, go ahead.
I knew it. I know you so well. I knew that you're like you were fading a little bit because you. Yeah, I knew it. I love you, Joe. You know I love you. That's
We
why.
do, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. You did great, though. Thank you. Principles of unity. This is a preamble. Preamble. There we go. This is a preamble to Red Nation's Principles of Unity, ratified by the First General Assembly of Freedom Council in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on August 10th, 2018, Pueblo Revolt Day, in the spirit of Papier. Did I say that right? Papier? 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 We are indigenous revolutionaries. We are comrades and relatives first and foremost. We practice radical democracy and compromise for our relatives. Despite differences in organizational roles or affiliations, we are equal in struggle. We are anti-capitalist, anti-colonial. We are indigenous feminists who believe in radical rationality. We do not seek to milder forms of capitalism or colonialism. We demand an entire new system premised on peace, cooperation, and justice for our earth and relatives to live. Capitalism and colonialism must die. We belong to the long traditions of indigenous resistance. We claim our rightful place among all freedom fighters around the world. We are not the first, nor will we be the last. We are the ancestors. We are the ancestors from the before and the already forthcoming. By carrying this history forward, we actively create the world in which we want to live. We seek to not just challenge power, but to build power. We are not simply a negation of the nightmarish colonial colonialism, capitalism, heteropatriarchy, imperialism, and white supremacy. We are the embodiment and affirmation of the coming indigenous future, a future which many worlds fit. We believe that all oppressed nations have the right to self-determination, to decide their own destinies. We, the Red Nation, are self-determining peoples. We enact the principles of freedom and integrity in how we seek to live as good people of the earth. We organize through education, agitation for revolutionary change. We encourage our relatives and comrades to believe in revolutionary change. We advocate for global decolonization. We agitate among the poor and working class, the colonized and the dispossessed, to install the confidence to fight back and take control of their destinies. We believe in pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. We remain accountable to our people and our nations. We do not have, quote, perfect politics. We do not believe in factionalism or rigid ideology. We can die having had a correct position, quote unquote, but having accomplished nothing and freed no one. The desire to be right or perfect is the highest form of cynicism. Our role as revolutionaries is to cheerlead the movement at all turns. Above all else, we desire to free and believe we will win. Optimism will thrive so long as we struggle for freedom. We believe in correct ideas which only come through revolutionary practice and struggle. Our power and judgment comes from the labor of our own struggle. We are not above the people. When the people move, we move with them. Reminds me of Mass Line and also what Maoist positions are. We are the permanent persuaders. We believe revolutionary change is not only possible, but inevitable. Like our hearts, our politics are down and to the left. And because we are the fifth figured ones, our fists are the size of our hearts. We raise our fist to lift our hearts of our people. We give everything and take nothing for ourselves. We uphold personal and organizational integrity at all turns of the movement. Change, it's dialectical and full of contradictions. It often comes without notice or without being noticed. Reactionary tendencies and contradictions will seek to destroy our momentum, diminish our opportunism, our optimism, not opportunism, and test our integrity. They will come in many and oftentimes unexpected forms. Even when the doubt, we pledge to remain faithful to our political principles and steadfast in our commitment to revolutionary struggle and optimism. We are the Red Nation. And that's it. That's the end. The rest is notes. Brilliant, brilliant read. Please produce more. Please produce more. Let's keep this going. All right. That's it. That's the book. That was a wonderful, beautiful, written, very, very detailed to the point of what land back is, what it means, what different categories within land back means, who's invited to these things, what kind of people they want around these things. They want coalitions. They want people to take up the fight with indigenous people to be able to get the land back so that we can have more liberation processes through the liberation of land. Yeah. So it's wonderful. I think they have other books. I just don't know. I have to look more. But I think this is one of their main books that they had. So I think I'll look at more. I don't know if they have a books, if you can go, they probably most likely have a website that you can go to and find out too. So I'm gonna go see if their website has books.
They have a part 1, they have a part 2, part 3, by the way.
Part 2, part 3. Huh.
Yes.
Nice. So I was thinking, depending, that I'm going to read Blood in My Eye by George L. Jackson next. This will be like the 3rd time I read it online, but I think it's important. And then maybe we'll read a couple of that, then we'll do part 2 once I find it. But that's it.
Sounds good to me.
Early over. Wonderful book. Loved it. Every minute of it.
Yeah.
And want to end.
Part 2 is Heal Our Body, and part 3 is Heal Our Planet.
Okay. All right. Do you know if you can get us some PDFs on that?
I probably can.
All right, cool. Let us know. If not, I think Lynn might be also going to go find them because Lynn's very resourceful. So looks like you got a little bit of competition. Just kidding.
But with that being said, the thing I thought was funny is that you paused on the one word because you didn't know the second word was coming because it was talking about intellectuals, and you're like, you paused on the one word and you're like, what? That doesn't make sense. And you said the second word. You're like, oh, now I get it. Okay.
Yeah. They talked about how they organically make their intellectuals, which is how Maoism did it. That's how Mao did his revolution. He didn't like the bourgeoisie intellectuals, the petite bourgeoisie. So creating organic intellectuals is the most important part because it comes from the pool of the masses. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, there's plenty more indigenous writings too. Like, it's not just this one. There's other ones that go along the same lines. But the thing is that they even promote in this book for people to pick up the pen and continue on.
I like
that was one of the things about this book when they said that, when I first read it, because they inspire people to, like, literally, if you can't go out there and do like stuff like among the people, then you can also help in ways of other ways. And they even laid some of those out where it was like, you can go out and write more because that is also helping with the movement.
Yeah. And also, I like how they took care in this book because they even described what they did for this book to be even a thing. They talked about the processes and everything to make sure that they're pushing out the right, correct ideas and the correct things to help educate people. And I love the fact that they also say that they're not perfect and they continuously learn and they learn from failures. I love that because that's exactly how scientific socialism and like dialectical materialism is an ever going process with new correct theories being implemented according to the conditions of how it's being conducted. I love it.
Well, that's across indigenous cultures. Perfection's a fallacy in indigenous cultures. That's why, like, when you see beadwork, we will purposely put one bead that's not a part of the pattern inside the pattern, because we don't believe in perfection.
Yeah, perfection is the tenet of white supremacy and has been put on because you can never achieve a perfection. Hence, you can never completely assimilate into whiteness. You know? So yeah, I like that.
That's why they said that that's why they said they have no problems with the book being debated. They said that they have no problems with being wrong. If they're wrong, then they will take accountability for that, but at least they tried.
Yeah, and it looks like they would come up with like statements to like correct those ideas too, so people know that they've corrected their ideas too. So that's with any kind of revolutionary sources and movements, you know. Criticism and critiques advance not only the theories and the knowledge, but advances the tactics and how to implement said things. You know what I mean?
Correct. I was also I love the fact that they always say, because that was one of the things I loved about it. At the end of the book, they're saying that they're always open for this to be debated among stuff. But I love the one part where they said the one thing they don't want to happen is some YT person trying to use some superiority complex and trying to use it against it.
Right. But I do. I like it, and I like you said before, and I want to also reiterate it. I would like to know more communist indigenous movements, and it sounds like there's a lot that are not being pushed forward. And I'm glad that the Red Nation does have have the responsibility of also showing people like this, and then maybe even directing people into not just the Red Nation, but to also discover, investigate other things that they're in coalition with, who are parallel with them and connected with them in order to bring on liberation and national liberation. You know what I mean? Because I agree that indigenous people need a national liberation process, you know?
They're quite clear that in Red Nation is not just indigenous people. They also have people that are not indigenous, that are communist, and so on and so forth inside there. That was one of the things they always wanted to make clear throughout the book, is there's not just indigenous people. And they even said it there at the end. It's not just indigenous people. When you're reading like who are Red Nation, it went over the fact that it's not just indigenous people.
Yeah, I would love to get in contact with them. Maybe I could talk to the people that I'm belonging to, because one of their people are coming out to go through a certain training course that they want to help me with. Maybe I'll ask them what their connections with the coastal regions of indigenous people here, if they've connected with them or have done work with them, or, you know, are willing to engage and do work with them. You know what I mean? Because I think it's important that even as a Maoist and being part of an org that principally is Maoist, is the connection of coalitions through indigenous. And but they do recognize the fact that's important, that land back and indigenous sovereignty and self-determination is the most important thing, one of the biggest important things of the United States, of the process of decolonization. But I'm wondering if they have any outreach with them. That's what I'm wondering, you know?
Well, you can always find out on your end.
Yeah, I will find out tomorrow, because I have one of my comrades coming over to go through a specific type of training. So we'll see, you know? The person I'm talking to is an advanced Maoist too, you know. So I'm learning a lot from him already, from them already. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, this has been a fantastic book, and once those next volumes come in between readings, we'll do that again. We'll do a couple readings and then we'll go back. We'll do a couple readings and then we'll go back. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Because this was a Maoist reading, but this is important because this is indigenous sovereignty. And if we're, as Maoists, about land back to indigenous people, right? Yeah. Oh, look, Lynn found part two already. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Saying the same thing. Lynn found part 2 already.
I'm going to start it after I was thinking of reading Blood in My Eye unless Gabby comes up with anything, but I haven't gone in contact with Gabby a lot lately. So my default will be Blood in My Eye since George Jackson was a Maoist. So I think that's important to still go over. And then I was thinking about going back to part 2 and then doing a Maoist reading, then back part 3. That's the goal.
I bet you I could find you some Maoist writings from the indigenous people.
Do it.
I bet you any money I could.
Do it. That'd be fun. That'd be great. You know? Because I wonder if the Red Nation, when it comes down to it, they talked about. I think they talked about how Standing Rock was a basically a oh my God, what do they call it? Mao calls it something too. Oh my God, I forgot what the thing is. Fucking hell. An autonomous reigns, but it was a liberated zone. Liberated zone.
Yeah, that's what they even said. Liberated zone.
Yeah, yeah. When we come back to the ideas of actually doing the physicality of this, it's going to be, I think, in an SW, in a sense of like we need to gather with the indigenous people because they're going to create through the revolution that same scenario. I think you know what I mean of liberated zones and areas to then consolidate and to move out and expand for the decolonization because decolonization is not going to be peaceful. And I know listening to one of their videos, that they completely understand that it's not going to be, hey, we're ready now. No, it's going to take and smash and dismantle and do the hard things, you know?
I mean, they were pretty clear on the end there saying that capitalism has to unalive for.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I love that. I love how they put it in perspective without saying the word, because I think they're also trying to protect a little bit too. OPSEC, right?
No. Sometimes they'll say things that they're not trying to OPSEC for. There's this tendency among indigenous people. We kind of gave up on OPSECing and just were like, you know what? We're just going to say it. Because, like, what's the worst? They've already done the worst things that they can do to us. What are they just going to continue it?
I could see that. I can see, like, you know, I get that. That's understandable too. That's for sure, you know. But yeah, I got done early. Next is George Jackson's book. Unless other people decide to do something else, but I'm going to do George Jackson's book. I say next.
Oh, I'll be in here to hear it.
Yeah. It's not as good when I hear it from when Black comrades read George Jackson's Blood in My Eye. It hits much different, and my brain connects to things much differently. So I have to admit that it's hard as white people because we don't live the scenarios and the conditions that indigenous and Black people live. So it doesn't hit as well, but still worth continuously reading. You know what I mean? No matter what, you know.
Side note off the books, did you hear? I'm assuming you've seen the video I posted. Did you hear what is happening to the people that were caught in the flotilla?
Yeah, not I. Joe brought me to the scenario of what they did to Greta. You know what it made her do.
Yeah, they for TikTok purposes, beat. There's more to it than that because there's more reports coming out. But we're just going to go with beat and assaulted Greta, and then grab Greta by the hair and drag them over to a flag of theirs and forced her to kiss it.
Wow.
That came out that said they also wrapped her in the flag and made her stand there.
Yeah, I heard that one too.
Greta, just go through it. Just go through it. Fuck them. Greta has turned from a climate activist, still is, to almost, I think people have claiming that she's become more radical, like a communist more.
She's anti-capitalist for sure. Anti-capitalist.
Even she's developed. And I'm wondering if she survives this part, going the second time in the flotilla, what is it going to do to her? Is she going to be even more radicalized even further? You know what I mean?
Well, the prison that they have them all at is known for essaying and raping women that are put there. Like the doctor, I forget that was where they were from, but they were also taken from another country there, and they were essayed and raped to unalivement. So, yeah.
All eyes, all eyes. See what happens next. See who else is there, because there's other activists.
Oh, and Switzerland's not trying to get their people back. So I think it's Switzerland. Wherever she's from, I forgot the
Sweden, I
country,
thought.
but they're not trying to get her back.
Is she Swedish? Let's find out.
I thought so.
I think Swedish. It's because she's called out the government for being a dirty capitalist country.
I'm gonna go on mute real quick. We're gonna find this out just to confirm. As soon as I can.
This is when Kim needs to step up and follow through with said threat.
You're right. Swedish climate activist. And I heard that her parents are rich though, but she doesn't fucking like them or something. I heard that that their parents are rich or something. But
But they want
she's done-
to use
she's
the
done-
money to save the environment.
yeah, she's done a whole class. If Greta is what she says she is, she did a whole class. What's it called? Class unaliving. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I think her net worth, like last time I looked it up, was like less than like 100,000 or something like that. Even though it would have been higher because she continuously sends her money back to activist movements and stuff like that.
Yeah. So let's find out. I think also if the flotilla should also hopefully give grounds, but not, of course, not the United States, because they fucking suppressed the fucking shit.
There's a second one, you know that, right?
What?
There's a second one that's already on its way there.
Boom. But what it's doing is drawing conditions for people to actually to revolt. I hear like Italy, France, and other countries are fucking on fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're revolting, but there's another flotilla. It's coming from Turkey. There's a whole another 40-something ships coming from Turkey, plus another a cruise ship, basically, that has a whole bunch of people on it too that are taking in there too.
All right.
I don't know if it's a cruise ship, but it's like a giant, like, I wouldn't call it necessarily a cruise ship, but it's like a giant, like cargo ship in a way.
Yeah, and what I hope happens is that they increase through these failures, these so-called failures. I would say not complete failures, right? Because they did something, right? But hopefully, because through failures, you develop tactics and strategies better after your like failures. Like it should teach you better strategies and tactics. So hopefully, this whole deal is increasing their methods of strategies and tactics in order to,
To Izzy, it was a failure on their part because, interesting fact, I don't know if you know this or not, but because Izzy was focused with their Navy and military on stopping all of these people trying to get into Gaza, the people in Gaza were able to go fishing finally and were able to pull in a crap ton of fish while this was happening.
I saw that video. So... yeah.
So I mean, it's a benefit. And we also...
That video was from February. So, like, they said they were still able to pull in fish, but that video specifically was from February.
No, I was just going by what I saw on the things they were saying they were able to pull in fish.
Yeah.
I also do know that the ground movement that was going alongside also managed to make it into Gaza, but, like, ended up getting stopped.
What was that kid you said that broke the siege?
It was an Israeli teenager.
There's an Israeli teenager that broke the siege. What did he do? He just broke it and did what?
He was trying to get in, but they knocked him out.
Oh, they finally... did he unalive?
No, but they got him.
Oh, they got him. They okay. So.
The thing I'm wondering about is Greg. Has anyone heard any updates about Greg?
Which Greg?
Stoker.
No.
Stoker got taken too. Greg Stoker got taken too. They were on one of the flotillas.
Yeah. I worry about people of color on the flotillas being put in the Israeli prisons because I noticed that white people got freed first before any people of color, it felt like, got freed.
There was one person, I think they were American, I cannot remember their name, but they were a part of the black community they came out and stated that the IDF literally used their chains to choke them and like forced them against the wall and like made racial slurs and stuff like that to them.
Damn. Yep. Well, they're our child. They're the United States child, so of course, right?
But I did see that here's an interesting fact for you. Russia has now made a threat towards Netan. We have Russia, China, and North Korea have all made threats towards Netan.
Good. That's good. That's good.
So
I just got to get Egypt to do the same thing.
the problem is Egypt's funded by the U.S. too.
Yes, I know. Yeah, that's the problem. Like, usually, like the EAU is not a good entity. Now, Hezbollah, I heard, is a good one, but EAU is bad.
I did hear the EU actually finally declared that Israel is committing a genocide.
Oh my God! Finally.
Like I think it was today too, which I saw. I don't know if it happened today, but it was on the news, like one of the feeds that I saw about it.
Yeah.
I do too. I hope Kim keeps their promise too, which I was hoping that it would already have happened since what is going on with Greta in the first place, because they put their hands on Greta. Kim better keep the promise.
Yep. They better. Well, I'm gonna shut it down so I can go feed Rufus and go.
All right, you know what I always say: give Rufus all the loves. With that being